Okay, so yesterday we learned a little bit through Mr. Nicky about some of our empires. We had the Akkadian Empire, which remember they took over Sumer. So the big thing, and I can't say this enough, as we prepare for our test, as we prepare for the things that we've learned about this part of the world, remember, Mesopotamia was not a group of people. Mesopotamia was a place, right? So, Mesopotamia is a region. The Fertile Crescent is a region. There were lots of different groups that lived in that region, okay? And because there were lots of different groups that lived in that region, they had to fight over resources because the biome of Mesopotamia is a
desert.
Thank you. Right? So they had to fight over resources. So we learned yesterday that a city-state is an independent state. It includes a city and its surrounding territory. It has its own government, laws, army, main gods, its own economic system, and things like that. So these city-states would compete for resources because there weren't a ton of resources. Right? So, with city-states, the big things that we have to remember is they have the same responsibilities as countries. A city-state is not the same thing as a city and a state. So when you think city-state for ancient times, don't think like Kansas City, Missouri. Don't think like San Diego, California, or Miami, Florida. It's not a city and a state. A city-state was more like a country because remember, city-states could control their own money. They could print their own money. Can Kansas City, Missouri print its own money that can be used anywhere in the world? No. Can the state of Missouri print its own money that can be used anywhere in the world? No. Right? A city-state had its own laws and government. A city-state had its own army or its own military, and a city-state had its own land with borders. So that is one of the huge differences between a city-state and a city and a state. So you gotta know the difference. Okay? So on our next slide, and this is still going to be politics, right? As these cities fought for control, remember from what we learned with religion, who were the only people that could talk to the gods in that state? Priests. So the priests had a lot of power. But what wound up happening was the priests, since they were all about talking to the gods and religion, they didn't really spend a whole bunch of time preparing for war and fighting. So the priest would choose the best person to lead the city-state in a battle, right? They'd be like, you know what? We're here to talk to the gods. The gods told us that Dr. Adams is a beast on the battlefield. He's going to lead us into victorious battle, right? So after the war was over, the leader was supposed to give up their power and return to normal life. But let's be real. How many people are really going to do that? Right. Once you've got the power, and remember, if you're in charge of the military, what are you in charge of?
Everyone.
The army, the people with stabby, kill ability. Right? And so, these rulers, some of them are like, nah, I'm good on giving power back. I kind of like having everybody being able to listen to me. I kind of like being in control. And again, since all the people who are stabby, kill listen to me, what are you going to do about it? Right? And so this is how we kind of get our first kings. So the thing to kind of remember here, there's always been a struggle between religious and political leaders. I mean, we can still kind of see it today, right? It's one of the reasons why in the United States, we made our first amendment, the first change we made to the Constitution was say, hey, we're not going to have one religion that is a state religion. And we did that because we didn't want politics to affect religion, right? We didn't want people's religious beliefs to be affected by politics. Now, in some countries, like France, for example, they have a similar amendment, but they did it because they didn't want religion affecting politics. But there's always been this struggle between religion and politics, right? So that led to something called secular leadership. And secular just means non-religious. Because remember, in early Mesopotamian groups, the priests were in charge. That's a religious person in charge. Our next unit is going to be Egypt. The pharaoh was a religious person. That is a religious person in charge. Secular just means that the person in charge is not there because of religious reasons. Now, does that mean that the person who's in charge can't be religious? No, you can still be religious. So, like, for example, in the United States, we have a secular government. But a lot of people who are our governors and mayors and stuff like that, they are people who are of different religions and different faith. But they don't base their political decisions necessarily off of their faith. So it's a little bit different. But secular doesn't mean that you have to be non-religious to be in government or to be in power. It just means that the laws aren't necessarily based on religion. So that's something kind of important to remember, that we have these priests and we have these now kings kind of battling for who's going to have control, right? Because remember, in Mesopotamia, who's still the only person that can talk to the gods? The priests. So that's going to give them a bunch of control. But who's the person in charge of the people with the stabby, stabby, kill kills? Who's in charge of the army? The king, right? So you've got the king with the military power and the political power. You've got the priest with the religious power and the kind of popular power. So kings still needed the support of priests to stay in power, right? If the king's just going badmouth the priests, are people going to listen to the king? No, because remember, can the king talk to the gods? No, it's the priest. So the king still needed the support of the priest to stay in power. So priests were careful to respect the priest's rights and powers. Yeah.
May I use the bathroom?
Not right now.
Okay.
In return, the priest would declare that the gods had sent the king to rule the people and the city. Okay? So they kind of worked together. The king would say, yes, I'm listening to the priests because they're the ones that can talk to the gods. The priest would say, yes, we talk to the gods, and the gods said, that's who's supposed to be the king. Okay? So the idea that kings were chosen by the gods, became very popular in Sumer and in Mesopotamia. So please make sure you're getting this stuff in your notes. And again, what part of this are we putting it in? Politics. Now, as we've kind of noticed, and I love the fact that we're thinking this through, where else could this information go, even though we're not putting it there now? Religion, right? Right? So, something to keep in mind with our notes, the idea of divine leadership was very common throughout history. We're going to see this a lot, where it wasn't people that chose who was in charge. The thought was, hey, the gods wanted this person to be in charge. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. So people felt that the gods and goddesses, and remember, in Mesopotamia, when we were talking about religion, did Mesopotamian people believe that the gods had a lot of choices in people's lives? Yes or no? Yeah, remember they thought the gods controlled like all the different parts of your life, right? So they felt that the gods decided what family you were born into. So if you were born into the royal family, obviously the gods wanted you to be in the royal family. If you were born to a family of farmers, obviously the gods wanted you to be a farmer. If you were born to a family of fishermen, obviously the gods wanted you to be a fisherman. If you were born to a family of fishermen and you were supposed to be king, that didn't make sense. Because if you were supposed to be a leader, the gods would have made you been born into a family of leaders. If you were a farmer, you didn't grow up wanting to be a priest, because if the gods wanted you to be a priest, what would your parents be? Priests. Okay? So they felt like you were born where the gods wanted you to be. So if you were born as the first son of the king, the gods wanted you to be the king. If you were born as the second son of the king, the gods didn't want you to be the king. Okay? So that idea of divine leadership is super important. You don't necessarily, and I love the fact that some of us are typing this out, You don't necessarily need to. This is just something to keep in the back of your mind. Okay? If it's not highlighted, you definitely can add it to your notes, but you don't have to. Yeah. No, because I want to make sure we're not missing this. Okay, so this part, super important. Some kings would begin to have a collection of their laws written down. Okay? These were early attempts at a law code which would serve as a foundation for the complete law code known as Hammurabi's Code. What? What?
Hammurabi's Code.
Wow. All right. So, remember the important thing with these laws is that now they're written down. Once kings start writing laws down, it changes things. So give me just a sec if you're writing this, because I want to make sure everybody sees this. Okay? So stop what you're doing for just a sec. Now, let's say that this is my kingdom. Right? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different areas in my kingdom. Now, if I'm in this part of my kingdom, can I also be in that part of my kingdom at the same time? No. So what I do is I assign somebody to rule in my place if I'm not there. So let's say I say, Freddie, you're going to be in charge, and Denise, and Taylor, and Ella, and Ramir, and Barrett, and Summer, right? So if I'm at this table, who's in charge?
Ramir.
Me. Stabby, stabby, kill, kill. You're trying to overthrow your king? I'm here. You're saying you're in charge?
Yeah.
That's a bad day for you.
Oh, wait, you're a king?
Yeah, remember, this is my kingdom.
Oh,
So
yeah.
these are the people I put in charge. So if I'm here, who's in charge?
You.
Me. Now, if I'm right here, who's in charge here now?
You.
Who's in charge there?
Me.
Yes.
Oh, no.
If I'm over here, who's in charge here right now?
You.
Who's in charge here?
Me.
Who's in charge here?
Denise.
Denise. If I'm over here, who's in charge here now?
You.
Who's in charge here?
Ella.
Who's in charge here?
Ramir.
Who's in charge there?
Denise.
Okay? So, now here's where the problem happens. Let's say that, okay, yeah, we'll say that Mila decides to steal something. Right? Now, Ella is going to have to decide what her punishment is going to be. Right? Maybe Ella is kind of mad at Mila because, you know, she killed her dog. Right? So maybe she's going to have, yeah, she used the trademark Brad Stab to say kill, not to kill the dog. Right? But maybe she has, again, to steal a word from you Gen Alpha people, Mila is her aunt. Right? So her punishment is going to be a little bit stricter, right? Because if you have a chance to get back at your aunt, you're going to do that, right? Now, let's say that Maya steals something here when I'm not here. Denise and Maya are really cool. They're really good friends. She might let her off and well, you know what? You need to give it back, and you're going to have to like work for them for a week, but then it'll be cool. Right? The point is, if I'm leaving different people in charge and I'm not there, there's going to be different ways that the rules are interpreted. Now, if I'm king, I can't have that. I need everything to be consistent. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down laws, and I'm going to say, Denise, yes, you're in charge. But if I'm not here, these are the rules. This is what you need to do. And everybody's going to get the same thing. So now, if somebody steals in that part of the kingdom, if somebody steals in this part of the kingdom, they get the same punishment. Okay? So, if you didn't get a chance to get this written down, go ahead and do that really quickly. So it's important to remember the six kings were chosen by the gods. Chosen by the gods. Chosen by the gods. Their words and laws were thought to be from the gods. Okay? And that makes sense because if you were born to the royal family, that means the gods wanted you to be the next royal person. If the gods wanted you to be the next royal person, remember the gods in Mesopotamia control the aspects of everybody's life. So if the gods put you in that position, the gods put you there because what you have to say is what the gods want the people to hear. So the words and the laws were thought to come from the gods. Okay? So does that part kind of make sense? Okay. So, you can go there. So, I do want to do a little bit of a recap on our city-state stuff, just to make sure that we get this. And then we will be able to move on. I appreciate our focus today. All right. So, remember, we've got a river, which is going to be super important. A water source is the most important thing in Mesopotamia because the biome of Mesopotamia is a desert. Right? So, if you have a water source, you've got to protect it. You got to make sure other people don't get it. And if we look here, our purple city-state, they're in big trouble because they don't have access to the water. Right? So purple takes over green, so now they've got access to the water. Right? As soon as purple takes over green, what is the red city-state thinking?
That they're cooked.
That they're cooked. They're next, right? And so the red city-state, they try to make alliances. They try to make teammates. So like we talked about, the red city-state, they're going to talk to the green city-state. They're going to say, we need to make an alliance. But not just a political alliance or not just a economic alliance. I've got a son who's of marrying age. You, Green City State, have a daughter of marrying age. Why don't we have my son marry your daughter so now we are family, right? Yes.
So what happens if the two countries have both sons?
Well, it wouldn't work then, right? But remember, during this time, people tended to have a lot more kids because people didn't live as long, So the likelihood of them of both just having all sons or all daughters probably wouldn't happen, right? Yes.
What was like the marrying age?
So remember, up until about 1920, the idea of being a teenager was not really a thing, right? You were either a child or once you hit puberty, you were an adult. So for most cultures, especially back then, there wasn't this, oh, you're kind of an adult, you're learning how to be an adult. It was either you're a kid or you're grown, right? So married age would have been puberty age.
10 or like 11? 11 or 12? 21.
More like, you can say probably like 15-ish. And what would happen would be, you might, so especially for girls, what would happen would be, you would be betrothed, which is like being engaged, but instead of you picking and somebody, oh, will you marry me? It's your parents are like, you're getting married to this person.
No.
So betrothed is like engaged, but it's arranged. So girls would get betrothed when they were like 10, 11, but they wouldn't get married till later, right? So engagements or betrothals would be a lot longer. They'd be like years. So you knew who you were going to marry, but it wasn't like you got engaged and then a year later you got married. It was like 4 or 5 years. Okay? So, city-state red and city-state green, the son and the daughter get married. So now these two city-states, they're not even just alliances, they're family. And that's good because now they've got the purple city-state stuck between them, right? So purple city-state knows if I attack red city-state, green city-state's going to attack me. Purple city-state knows if I attack green city-state, red city-state's going to attack me, right?
But if they both attack purple
I mean, they can really just split it into two for real, because that one's kind of smaller. They got a side on the left, so they can just attack right there.
Yeah.
So come up, and they
So
and
purple
they
could come
admitted,
here.
and they admitted Greece, so they can just it's not really that hard.
It's not really that hard. But the thing you have to remember is that they're going to spread their army really thin, right? So if you're spreading your army out along this really long front, you're probably not going to have as much down here because you only have so many troops and soldiers and men who can fight. So I like what you're thinking, and that makes a lot of sense. But you got to figure out, so okay, if we spread out here and we're going to attack here, I'm not going to have a bunch of dudes down here. It's going to make it easier for them to attack here, right? Or maybe what they do, if they attack here, we're like, all right, we'll fight them off here, but we're going to attack this part and cut off your access to water. And if we cut off your access to water, you're cooked.
Good.
Okay?
You're fried. You're
Yeah.
baked chicken.
Okay.